Hey guys, it's Delora Davils here, and I have a book review for you guys. Finally, I pinched a nerve a couple weeks ago, missed a lot of work, and I've been trying to play catch up, but ended up taking a Saturday night off because this shoulder is still stiff. I don't actually know if it's a pinched nerve because I don't have health insurance. So I'm hoping that this will go away in time, and if not, might have to get health insurance next year just to figure out what's wrong with me. But anyway, seeing as it is too painful to our platforms, book review. Alright, so this is New World Witchery. This has been out for a little while now, I think about a year. There is a podcast by the same name, and the podcast is it's pretty interesting. I enjoyed it. It's definitely on my list of things to listen to when I clean my room, because I don't do that nearly as often as I should, and I need a pleasant distraction. Not the best at cleaning. Anyway, I actually downloaded the audiobook for this because as I was reading it, I'm used to having to study things, right? And like really like ponder every word type shit. And like this book is very conversational. And I was like, you know, I'm getting bored reading this, but I bet I would love listening to this. And so I got the audiobook. It is now one of my favorite audiobooks. I will re-listen to certain chapters. Basically, this is a brand new book. I didn't really like read much of it, but I finished listening to it. And I have to say the stories that are in here, the folk tales and magic that is in here is very... Oh, I mean, like he talks about cryptids. There's a little short section that talks about cryptids. And if you're like me and all you've ever done is watched YouTube videos about cryptids, you might not have actually known the like origin stories and like the magical stories, especially like the Jersey Devil. Like you always hear of like an escaped like lab thing, and that's the Jersey Devil. Nah. The original Jersey Devil story was a woman made a pact with the devil and then had a half devil, half human baby, and that baby is the Jersey Devil. That's the short version, all right? The long version is in here, and it's very, very good. I love the detail in these stories. I also really, really like how precise he gets based on regions, right? Because he doesn't just tell you like one aspect of the story. There are some stories that are told across different regions, and each region has different storytelling differences, right? Like it might be an entirely different plot change, who knows? But he tells you. They tell you. Corey Thomas Hutchison tells you. There's also, because I work at a club, I do a lot of drinking. There was also one about intentional drinking, right? So like what ingredients go into your cocktail, right? I have been drinking a lot more margaritas at work, right? For those reasons. You know, it's kind of cool. I never thought, there's a lot of things in here that I never thought about doing before. Anyway, without further ado, I almost forgot to show you guys the table of contents. Yes. So, the table of contents. I will say this book is very heavy. I have a lot of heavy books that I actually have to put them on a book stand, right? Because it'll actually hurt my wrists. I swear, guys, the closer I march towards 30, the more my body tries to fall apart on me. And definitely now that I'm doing pull tricks, my wrists are quite dainty, I've noticed. Because my butt is very heavy. A very, very heavy butt. It's not easy to lift that big old heavy butt on a pole. So these big books kill what's left of my wrists when I get home from work. Anyway. I will say, another reason why I did not enjoy reading this book so much is that this is a very wide book. Right? I'm used to reading like smaller books. I didn't realize what a strain it was to read tiny print all the way across a page, again, the closer I march to 30, the more I feel like an old person. Like, so it's not wide enough to do double columns, right? Because then that would just be really annoying. Your eyes would probably get tired from zipping like this all the way down. But I will often forget which line I'm on. I'll get to the end and I'll reread the same line twice, or I'll skip a line, and I don't usually have that problem. But this book is just that it's in that weird space where it's not wide enough to do a double column down the middle of the page, but it's also like too wide for someone like me to read comfortably. But anyway, like I said, the audiobook is absolutely fantastic. He always, not maybe not always, but most of the chapters have a dirt under the nails section. While I didn't do any of the dirt under the nails things, they all seemed really, really cool and kind of like, oh, I could turn this into something that I would use, right? And I really like that, again, this is a metaphysical writer that totally encourages you to do what you want with the material, right? However, with one caveat, closed practices. This writer actually talks about the importance of respecting a closed practice, how to respect a closed practice, and he and his wife's own run-in with that. They were selling hoodoo, traditional hoodoo and voodoo, like war water and things like that, and like poppets and stuff. And they actually had a voodoo practitioner reach out and let them know that that was inappropriate for them. This is a closed practice. They actually listened, right? And they talked about how that was a humbling experience and how they have moved forward. So it's not like someone on their high horse telling you, oh, I've never done that. And closed practices are always off limits. It's like, we did that and we pissed a bunch of people off from that practice and we didn't realize how hurtful it was. Let us tell you what we learned by doing this thing that you're kind of not supposed to do, right? In closed practices. So that was also very eye-opening, because I was like, I've never actually seen a practitioner in this day and age admit to dabbling in a closed practice, what it got them, what they learned, what they do differently now. Beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. They do talk about this is one thing that, because like, I don't know, I'm not from that area of the US, but like powwow and braucherei, I will never call it powwow, okay, because a Native American ceremony has often been called a powwow, and I don't know if powwow is what they call it or if that is a not okay thing to say. I don't know. So I avoid that word like the plague. And to see that word used so often, I was like, they do typically use the term braucherei though. I don't even know how that term got in there. I would have kind of liked more talk about that specific term in this book, but I digress. Moving on. There is a whole... Yes, so they do talk about Native American beliefs. I'm just going to read this real fast. It is highly reductive to lump all Native groups together for any reason, so here I wish to note that in general, I will be speaking of particular tribes, nations, groups, and their practices and beliefs, rather than any unified and whitewashed native magic. At the same time, I do wish to acknowledge that the beliefs of different indigenous groups about witches varied greatly, but almost all had some belief in a witch-like figure, and these tales and beliefs dramatically influence much of the magic on the North American continent. And it does. It does. Definitely the more that, as a practitioner, that I have read about Native American culture, right? Not just like spiritual books on Native Americans. No, like you gotta read their culture, because especially if you read, there were a lot of Native American orators that would go around and talk about, you know, like how they should have rights and not be genocided all the time. And one of them was Red Jacket, I think was his name. It's been years since I took that course in college, but I learned so much just from reading these speeches. I think the book was actually called Great Native American Speeches or something like that. And very interesting, very haunting, because they're literally advocating for, you know, colonizers to not do what they literally were just about to do, right? So it's really, really, it's very haunting reading those speeches. But anyway, like I said, yes, he kind of goes through and tells you about each of the influences in chapter 2, which is nice. It's kind of nice being like, oh, okay, here's kind of like all the different factions, you know, and their magics and how they intermingle and all of that. And so that way, once you get into the stories, you're like, oh yes, these people, I've heard of them, as opposed to being like, what the hell is a Brahari? Because I had never heard of that before. Again, I don't live in that area of the country, so I'd never been exposed to it. Singing Bones is another little thing that he has that comes across sometimes, and it'll talk about people more often than not. Dirt under the... Also, the little icon for dirt under the nails is like, rock on. It's kind of cool. It is very motivating, right? Yeah, this has a lot of really, really good, like, in as far as like practicing goes. This is a pretty good beginner book, I'm not gonna lie. It has a very narrow focus, right? Again, very good for beginners. It doesn't leave anything out, right? So you've got protection, magic built into this, so it's like, even if you don't know what the hell you're doing, you could just get started with just one book. And I do like to mention that in my reviews, is that if you can get started with just one book, and this is not a super advanced book, right? I like for people to know that, because not everybody who is looking for occult book reviews is looking for something super, you know, in-depth, right? Some people just want surface shit, right? I am not a folk magic practitioner, but I do like to read things that are outside of my magical interest, because they still jive with my curiosity interest, right? Not every book that you read has to be a book that you perform the practicum out of, and so I just didn't perform practicum out of this one. If you did do any of the dirt under the nails and you really enjoyed this book, let me know in the comment section down below, and everything that you kind of like experienced, because sometimes you'll do just one little exercise out of a book and you're not expecting to have like a huge experience, and then it happens. I love how it always happens when you least expect it to happen, right? Yes. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this book review. Again, the audiobook is absolutely amazing. Give that a try if reading isn't your thing, because I don't listen to a lot of audiobooks. But I have been so on the go that I was like, and this is such a big book, and it was written so conversationally, that I gave it a try. I might be doing that a little bit more, right? And so with my book reviews, I'll let you guys know if I listen to the audiobook and whether or not I enjoyed the audio part of the audiobook, right? Yes. So until next time, happy dabbling and bye-bye. And again, I'm very sorry that it took so long for me to get another video out. I don't know what is wrong with my shoulder. I just don't. So this might be a thing where I might be a little bit more sporadic in my posting, simply because when my spine was hurting, I could not turn, I could not lift a book, especially not this big ol' honking book. So y'all, please bear with me. I like that you guys are very patient. Anyway.